and welcome back to another episode of The Jake Williams Show right here on loudandopinionated.com or wherever you get your podcasts. This is episode 28, and this is a Marvel-heavy episode, in particular, Captain Marvel. So if you're not interested in that, you've heard enough of Captain Marvel, I understand, but trust me, I'm going to give you a different perspective, a fresh perspective. And what I mean by that is, please listen to this show. But, yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I just saw it Wednesday. I know it's late to the party to talk about this movie, but I just saw it Wednesday, and my review is up. My spoiler-free review is up on loudandopinionated.com. I want to stress that this is going to be spoiler-filled, so if you still haven't seen the movie yet, don't listen to this. Read the review, go see the movie, and then come back, and I'll be right here waiting for you, ready for every question you could possibly throw at me. I will be here, ready to answer it. Well, not every question. I can't get in your minds. Before I get to Captain Marvel, I do want to talk about breaking news. Just right before I started recording this, James Gunn has been reinstated and will direct Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is huge news for Marvel. And I think it's even bigger news for Disney and the entertainment business as a whole, I think. For those that don't know, which I think it's impossible not to know, but this past summer, somebody unearthed some tweets that were jokes, but they were about pedophilia and necrophilia, and they weren't in great taste, and we actually covered it on, back when the show was called Loud and Opinionated, and Derek was my co-host, we actually talked about it then. I don't necessarily like what James Gunn said, or maybe even agree with what he said, but I also take it with face value that it was 10 years ago, and they were just tweets, and they weren't anything of value. You know what I mean? I think as a society, we've given too much strength to tweets, and we've given too much strength to social media, and we've given too much strength to words and not actions. James Gunn hasn't committed pedophilia or necrophilia or done any of those things. Now, I don't necessarily think those jokes are funny, but they were jokes, and they were not something that I think someone should get fired over, especially when they were said 10 years ago. And I'm not going to get into the Roseanne Barr thing, because the last time I did, I got into trouble with one of the few people that listen to this show. So I'm not going to talk about her because she's not related to this. I will say recently I've seen this happen again, and this was Tucker Carlson. Now, I don't like Tucker Carlson's show. I don't like his personality. Nothing about any of his stuff I agree with. But I think the whole situation with him is a little absurd, mostly because what he said is repulsive and narrow-minded and wrong. But that was also 11 years ago. And I think we need to stop digging into people's past like that. Unless they've committed a crime, we need to stop digging that deep into their past like that, because then there's not going to be anybody left, because then somebody is going to say something in a private conversation, or they think that's a private conversation, and something's going to come up that might be offensive and might be wrong, because I think people, when you're private, people can say something that might be considered very vulgar and very wrong, and I know that. That's just human nature. When you're in private, you kind of cut loose a little bit more. I'm not defending what Tucker Carlson said, but I also don't think that, much like James Gunn, I don't think he should lose his job over something he said 11 years ago. So I'm glad James Gunn is back. I think Disney and Marvel made the right move. I do think that the success of Captain Marvel and the future success of Avengers Endgame it made this decision for them. And it's just hard for me to picture anybody else taking the helm of Guardians of the Galaxy and making it work and live up to the reputation of the first two movies, because this is James Gunn's story. This is James Gunn's world that he's created. He added so much personality and flair to Guardians of the Galaxy that I don't think anybody else could match that. There's somebody that could try, but it's still, people would still look at it as this is his franchise, and it just doesn't live up to the hype. That being said, it puts James Gunn in a weird position now because he's a guy that's kind of was like what J.J. Abrams was when J.J. Abrams was directing Star Wars The Force Awakens, and before that he was directing the Star Trek reboot, the Star Trek and Into the Darkness, those reboot movies. He was doing it. So now you have James Gunn that's essentially, pardon the pun, a gun for hire, and he's working for both DC and Marvel. And who knows what's going to happen with the Suicide Squad, because, the Will Smith rumors of him not wanting to do it anymore, so maybe they need a new Deadshot. I don't know how that's going to work out. But I will say this, I'm happy that James Gunn is back. I think Marvel made the right decision to finally bring him back on. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is going to be interesting because they had it on hold. They were going to touch it. So I'm glad that they brought James back, and I hope we can all put this stuff behind us and get ready to watch what should be a really fun movie. So now let's talk about the main topic of the show, Captain Marvel. And as I said at the top, I have a spoiler-free review up on loudopinionated.com. I'm going to talk about spoiler aspects of this movie. So if you don't want to have this movie spoiled for you, don't listen. And then come back and trust that my opinions are going to be great. Believe it. So Captain Marvel. As I said, I saw it Wednesday afternoon at the Palms Theater in Waukee, Iowa. Great theater to check out. It's new. I haven't been there yet. It's massive, and it's on IMAX. This is my first IMAX movie. I thought it was going to be Avengers Endgame, but I decided, this was the best showtime to go see it. And, I want to get matinee prices. I got to go to wherever it plays. I had no prior knowledge of Captain Marvel going into this movie, and I think that's worked out to my benefit. Because I thought about this too. When I went to go see Guardians of the Galaxy, I had no knowledge of that team, of anything. I didn't know who Rocket was, or Groot, or Star-Lord, or Drax. I didn't know any of that stuff. And going into it with no expectations or no source material to pull from, I enjoyed that movie a lot more. I think that's the same thing with this movie. The little knowledge that I had of Captain Marvel was from the other MCU movies with the Kree, and I knew that Skrulls were in this, and I knew about what the Skrulls were because they're a bigger part of the comic books, and I'll get to them throughout this because Skrulls are one of the main plot points of this movie. The Skrulls are the bad guys, and that little bit of knowledge that I had, actually, I definitely think helped me like the movie more. And I gotta say, overall, with Captain Marvel, and I said this in my review, I think it's a fun movie. But I think the big issues for me are that it is a prequel, and I know that Captain Marvel won't die in this. She's coming back, and she's going to be in Avengers. They teed that up in Infinity War, even. And, Nick Fury's involved, and I know that he's going to make it out. I also know that he's going to come back somehow from what happened in Infinity War because of the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. And that's where I'm starting to get a little annoyed with Marvel. Where, yes, I know certain characters are going to, even though they were killed, also spoilers for Infinity War. If you haven't seen it, it's been almost a year, though. So that's on you. Yes, you could think of the thing of like, oh, the snap happened and, these characters died. But I also know that the characters that died, that they're going to have, like, they killed off T'Challa. And I'm like, there's no way in hell there isn't going to be a Black Panther 2 without as good as the first movie did in the box office. Same with Spider-Man. We all knew that Spider-Man was going to be, the second Spider-Man movie was planned, I think, back in 2017 when they were doing press for Homecoming, they said that the second Spider-Man movie was going to be right after Endgame. So I knew Spider-Man was going to make it. So his death was a little bit shocking, but then I was like, well, I know he's going to make it. So Infinity War had already started to shatter my suspension of disbelief. I understand that these are movies, and I understand that they're out to make money, but sometimes it's better to not have that more impact to the characters. That to me hurts Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel has virtually no stakes in this movie, because I know that most of these characters are going to be in other movies. So yeah, that definitely hurts it. But I'm not going to completely dock the movie, because that's not the movie's fault. That's not the directors, the writers, the actors. That is the fault of Marvel and Disney. And maybe they're just, I don't know, trying to build some hype behind their product. I get that, but kind of takes away from the story a little bit. Excuse me. I'm not going to completely do a review, because, like I said, I already wrote that, and it's already up on lineopinionated.com. So now I'm going to kind of bounce around and talk about the things, spoiler-filled, that I liked or didn't necessarily like about the movie. What I did like a lot about this movie is Brie Larson. I think Brie Larson does a great job as Carol Danvers and does a great job with this role. I've heard people, and I kind of wrote that in my review, I've heard other people say it just felt natural. And I would agree. I think I can't think of another character or another actor that would be this character. When I watch this movie and I see her performance and I see her growth as a character, I don't think I could see another actress. And I think that's a huge compliment to her performance. That being said, she is stiff as hell in the beginning of this movie, and I think that is a directorial choice. I don't think Brie Larson is a bad actress. She won an Academy Award, for Pete's sakes. Again, but you guys know I don't care about those. No, she has the chops. That was a directorial choice, in my opinion, of how her character is really stiff and kind of stoic. I think that plays up to the fact that she doesn't know who she is. In the beginning of this movie, she has no memory of who she is. We are just hanging out with the Kree, killing dudes, being a covert special ops stuff, which I really liked. I think the first act of this, maybe the first 45 minutes, much like Venom, which I'm not comparing the two, they're totally different movies, but very similar to Venom, where that first 40, other than the one scene where the Kree Spec Ops team are actually like working as a team, other than that segment, the first 45 minutes are kind of bland. They're kind of whatever. How they get into her backstory and the Doom memories, I thought that was a fun little interesting scene. So I think those two scenes are kind of cool. But even once she crash lands to Earth, until she lands on Earth and she starts interacting with Nick Fury, to me, that's where the movie finally hits its stride and really takes over, and that's when it becomes a fun movie, because there's so much to that. But I want to dial it back a little bit. I want to talk about the Kree Spec Ops team. I thought how they did that sequence was really cool, because it definitely, and I said this in my review, it definitely does feel like a video game. Like it was something that you would see in like Rainbow Six Siege or something, where every different character has a role to play, and the team is carrying out that mission, and they're doing what plays up to their strengths. And it was actually something that we didn't really see in the MCU, where we saw a covert ops military team like that work. We tried to see that with Captain America, and that never ended up well. I mean, the Winter Soldier kind of had that, but it was just Captain America running around stealth killing dudes on a cruise ship. But I really liked how they perceive these characters in this group. You really build up that Jude Law is a very militant, keep your emotions in check, hard ass, with which I liked Jude Law a lot in this movie. I think he did a great job with his role, and it says a lot about his charm that even after the twist happens. By the way, it's a spoiler review, so if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. After the twist happens, where it turns out he's the bad guy, he's still charming enough to where I'm not upset by it, and I'm totally into it. So after that sequence of the Spec Ops, yes, we have the memory stuff, which I thought was really cool on how you can do an origin story. I see a lot of issues where people think that the problem with this movie is it is a by the numbers Marvel movie. I would say yes and no. And I think some aspects are very much the typical Marvel origin movie and the typical this is, checking the boxes. But I think like sequences with the memory and the fact that she's trying to piece together her past, I think that adds a little bit of variety to the origin story. That being said, I can totally understand how people think this is a by the numbers Marvel movie because yes, it's kind of like the first Avenger. But I think it's better than, and I like the first Avenger, by the way. I know a lot of people are kind of divisive about that. That might be a in defense of episode. But I think it's still different. I think it still has its own personality, and it definitely finds its footing. I think it doesn't really completely find that footing until she's on Earth with Nick Fury. Sam Jackson, his performance is great. You can tell that he is actually having a lot of fun in this movie because he's getting to flesh out Nick Fury's story, and he's also getting to have more fun with it and be more loose. Because as fun as Nick Fury is in the later movies, well, technically, Jesus man, this is what happens when you do prequels. You mess up everything on how you say it because I say the later movies, but really I mean the earlier movies because they came before it. But whatever. I think, although his character is still kind of fun, though, it's still not as loose and loosey-goosey as this movie. And it's also cool to see that Nick Fury doesn't have the security clearance that we're used to seeing him have. When they go to the Pegasus station that's kind of underground, if he were to do that now in the current MCU, everybody would know who he is. He would get clearance right away. But in this movie, he gets a little bit of clearance and then ends up, holed up somewhere. And I like that. We don't necessarily get to see that as much. So that's one aspect of it being a prequel where I think it's fun and it works. And his scene with her in that little like break room area was awesome. Where he takes the tape and then he remembers, oh yeah, this security guard, he touched my ID so I can get the fingerprints to get out, and he uses tape to like get the print and put it out. And then a little bit later, a similar situation happens, and he's going to get the tape, and she just blows open the door with her like proton cannon fist or whatever. And he's like, "You could do that this whole time, and you let me play with tape." Like that was where I was like, yes, this is a '90s buddy movie. These two are going on a '90s fun adventure, and I liked it a lot. In reference to the movie being in the '90s. And the '90s references. I know some people thought they were too hokey and heavy-handed. I didn't necessarily feel that. I thought they did a very creative Stan Lee cameo where he's rehearsing his line for Mallrats, which I thought was really cool. But they did. I was listening to We Hate Movies on screen of this, and Steve Sadak actually made a great point where he says, well, that's cool and all, that's a fun cameo, but that kind of just blows up the universe because now Stan Lee actually just made it all up because all the things that he's famous for are comic book characters that are actually real-life people in this. Like, it's a weird thing to think about, but it is kind of funny to be like, well, they kind of just blew up all the ideas of this universe because Stan Lee is in it, but I'm also I applaud them for the Stan Lee tribute. I thought that was really cool. The the typical Marvel Studios logo where they put in him instead of the characters. I really like that a lot. I don't know how they're gonna do the Stan Lee tribute in Endgame, but it should be interesting. I'm so happy that a few years ago he said, "Look, I'm not getting any older. I'm not getting any younger. I am getting older. I'm not getting any younger. I got to film all these cameos." I'm happy that we still get to see Stan Lee in these movies. I gotta give a special shout out to Ben Mendelsohn. He steals the show. As great as Sam Jackson is, and as great as Brie Larson is in this movie, holy hell, Ben Mendelsohn is phenomenal in this movie. He is the Skrull leader Talos. And this is where I'll kind of get into this. There's a certain part in this movie where, as a comic book reader, I know all about the Skrulls. I know that they're bad people. Yes, it's like what they say in this movie. They can shapeshift and they turn into anybody that they want. I know that about these characters. They're not good people. And how this movie handles the Skrulls is really cool, and I'm glad that, Marvel stuck behind it and Disney stuck behind it, because it is a fun twist. We find out that, hey, the Skrulls aren't the bad guys. The Skrulls are actually just trying to find a new planet, and the Kree just keep wanting to kill them and kind of eradicate them. And so that is when the movie flips a switch on Ben Mendelsohn's character. Because throughout the movie, he is a generic superhero villain. He's not mustache twirling, but he's the typical villain that you would see in these origin movies. And when the switch flips and you find out that he's not the bad guy, then it's like the movie says, okay, so he's a good guy and he's an ally to Captain Marvel. Let's have fun with it. And like the scene where he looks at the when she just says, oh yeah, the space station that just gives you coordinates, it's just in orbit. It's physics. And then he says, in orbit, and he just looks at this other guy that he's with, this other Skrull, and he's like, you're my science guy. And he just kind of, the science guy just kind of shrugs. And that is what I love, and I think that really captures what Captain Marvel is as a movie. It is a superhero movie. It is a 90s buddy action flick. But it also does a great job at subverting expectations and changing our minds. Now, remember how people say it's by the numbers? I think the movie, once she meets Sam Jackson, yes, it starts to feel a little bit by the numbers Marvel, but it's still entertaining and it's still fun to watch. When Ben Mendelsohn flips after that Skrull twist, then the movie takes on its own personality, and I think that's where the movie really shines. And I can't wait to see more of Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel, because that was a very good way of making it a unique story and making it its own, is when you say, hey, the Skrulls aren't the bad guy, they're the good guys. Ben Mendelsohn as Talos is great. When they go back to the space station, that is interesting too, because then you get to see Talos' family, and you see that he wasn't bullshitting her, he was telling her the truth. You find the Tesseract on the ship, and that's where I kind of had, there's to me a little bit of continuity errors, because are you telling me, and I understand that Pegasus is kind of it's a division of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they do, which great job continuity wise here. In the first Avengers, they have the Tesseract, but it's in Pegasus, so that's really cool. But how we got there was kind of weird, because Howard Stark, I think, gets the Tesseract in the first Avenger, I believe. I don't know. No, I'm wrong. It is the first Avengers movie that it's in, so forget what I said. They did it right. Interesting choice to have the Tesseract there, and I think that's just a broader way to tie this to the other Marvel movies, and it also continues to build a mythos of the Infinity Stones and how important they are, and it kind of gives Brie Larson and Captain Marvel's character familiarity with what the Infinity Stones are. I love Goose. I think Goose was a funny addition, and I think that's a lot to Sam Jackson's performance, where I think any other time I would probably be annoyed with how much he plays with the cat, and they just keep cutting to the cat. But he's having so much fun in this role, and that level of fun is so infectious that I don't get upset with all the heavy-handedness of the cat. Plus, I'm an animal person. I love animals. I will say though, the CGI on this cat is bad. I think the de-aging is great on Sam Jackson. I think it looks pretty good on Clark Craig. But man, oh man, they skimped the budget on the cat, which makes me wonder. It's like, why couldn't we just have the real cat the whole time? Why did they have to add CG? Now, when the tentacles come out and it's eating shit, I get all that. Obviously, that's got to be CG. But like, there are moments where the cat's like just jumping down or jumping on things, and it looks CGI, and I'm like, why? What was the purpose? You couldn't get the cat to film on that day? I don't understand. Well, there was, I think, 4 cats is what they used, but you just didn't have a cat for that day, so you had to put it in CG. I don't know why they did that. It was bad. It was uncanny valley bad. And you could clearly tell when there was the physical, real-life cat, and you could clearly tell what the CGI cat was. I don't know. It bothered me. It bothered me. Every time I saw it, it was weird. I didn't like it. Not a fan of it. But yeah, overall, I there's a lot that I liked about this movie. I liked the scroll twist. I liked Ben Mendelsohn. I think the cast in general is fantastic. Top to bottom, I think that it was a very well casted movie. Now, in terms of story-wise, I like the ending. A lot of people are complaining about this, about the use of the licensed music towards the end of the movie. I thought how they were used, I have two minds about it. You know, there's some people that don't like the No Doubt song because it doesn't feel right in the moment. And I can understand how people probably would have wanted the song to be more choreographed to the fighting. So, like, when that song hits, why doesn't she punch someone to the beat of the song? And I think that might be because people were spoiled with movies like Baby Driver, and there are other movies that really play up the music to be a part of the narrative. And I agree, I think that would have worked better in the scene, but I think overall it didn't take me away from it, because when that song kicks in and that fight scene happens, I cracked a smile. I enjoyed it. I was like, well, okay, because we were really starting to have fun with this movie. Because majority of the movie, there's a little bit of fun here and there, but it's kind of serious. And then, like I said, once the scroll flip happens, and then Jude Law's team shows up, and then it's like, okay, we're having good times with this. And the fact that the diversion was that she was gonna have the Tesseract in a Happy Days lunchbox, brilliant, funny stuff. I loved it a lot. So the I'm Just a Girl, I think, doesn't hurt the movie for me, doesn't take away. I don't have a huge opinion on it, but I will say that I do understand people's criticism that it isn't choreographed well. Now, there's also people that thought it was too on the nose. I get that too, but I think that it works to this movie's benefit, honestly. And then the Nirvana Come As You Are bit where she's in the Supreme Intelligence, I thought that was fine. I thought that it did its job. I did think it was kind of... I do kind of see the idea of like, okay, well, it's a 90s movie. We have to have some sort of grunge music in there. And then the 9 Inch Nail shirt. So, yeah, I can understand how people felt like it was a little heavy-handed on the 90s. I know that I felt that way with Bumblebee. So I understand how people can feel that way about this movie. I got to say the ending I thought was interesting, where she's just full-on just wrecking shop of everything. I thought that was great. The fact that Ronin shows up to her just like blowing stuff up, to him be like, all right, I'm gone. Let's not. We'll be back. No, you won't, because we know he dies in Guardians. Which is so funny how they play up Ronin in this movie to be like this, Ronin the Accuser, this big badass, this big bad guy, and then in Guardians he's kind of nothing, and he gets killed by the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I thought it was weird that he wasn't wearing the eye makeup in this movie. Maybe he just decides to wear it later in his life. But I did think that was weird that he doesn't wear it, and it does kind of feel weird to see Lee Pace just in blue with no eye makeup. I think that's pretty much all to cover for the movie. The last thing I want to talk about is the final showdown with Jude Law is great, because it does what you think it would in like the traditional superhero or action movie trope, where it's like it's almost like a video game where it's like I've spent all this time leveling up, building up my character, being stronger, getting ready to fight, and then the one character's like, all right, here's how you prove your mettle. No powers. Let's just do this one-on-one, mano-a-mano, one-on-one, you and me. And it looks like it's going that direction, and then she just says, nah, and just hits him with the hand blast, and it knocks him over. And she has a line that I think was strategic here, but I also think is still effective in the storytelling, where she says, I don't need to impress you. And kind of like locks, arrests him in a way, I guess. I'm air quoting. That's what I love that line, because I think that was a statement for this movie. I think that was a statement for female leads in the genre. I think that was a huge statement of saying, I don't need to impress you, and I don't need to impress the people that are total idiots and were very dumb about this movie and all the pre-release stuff. And I want to kind of get into that, so I'm going to go right to that now. The pre-release for this movie, all the Rotten Tomatoes controversy, all this stuff, all these like anti-SJW people that are hating on this movie, those kind of people astound me. And look, I've said it before, I don't like the SJW stuff. I agree, I think sometimes, as a society, that we do play identity politics too much, and we do as a crutch, and we do use that to undermine people. And I think as a society we need to stop doing that. That is not the case with this movie. This is just a movie about a female lead. That's all it is. And in my opinion, much like Wonder Woman, I think these movies need to exist, and they need to happen. They are important, because as fun as it is to see all these male characters do all their thing and everything, it is selfish to say, the little boys out there, they get to see these characters in action, and little boys get to enjoy that. But the little girls don't have a character to look up to. And I think that's wrong. That's why I think Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel should exist, and people should enjoy them. So, review bombing Rotten Tomatoes, giving it a bad score, why? Because you don't like Brie Larson? Because you don't want a female Marvel movie, a female-led Marvel movie? I hate the idea that superhero movies and these nerdy type of movies are a boys' club. That's dumb. That's ridiculous. The whole reason people go and read a comic book, or the whole reason people buy a ticket to see these movies, are because they don't feel accepted. They don't feel they're outsiders. They're outcasts. They're different people. Doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your religion. Everybody has a common feeling of that, and that's how they connect with these characters. So just because it's a woman and not a man, to downplay a movie and hate on a movie, that's just stupid. And you see people, and you see guys on YouTube that are anti-identity politics and blah, 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 all this stuff. Yet they continue to make YouTube videos being political about every aspect of entertainment, every aspect of our society, and it's just annoying. Look, man, if the movie doesn't look like it's for you and it doesn't look interesting to you, that's fine. Don't go see the movie. And I understand that there's this thing where it was like when they rebooted Ghostbusters and they did the gender swap, they're all women. I didn't want to see that movie. I thought that it wasn't for me. Mostly because of the cast. It wasn't because they were women. It was because I don't find Leslie Jones funny, and I didn't, at the time, I really didn't find Melissa McCarthy that funny. And I just didn't look interesting to me. I also thought the movie shouldn't exist. I thought we were fine with the two Ghostbusters movies that we got. That doesn't make me sexist. But if I go on to Rotten Tomatoes and review bomb it and hate on a movie and talk shit on a movie constantly because there's a woman, because it's Brie Larson, blah, 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 then I'm definitely leaning into the sexist route. And sure, Brie Larson didn't help with all the things she said. People need to get over it. Because at the end of the day, this is a fun movie. And you're missing out on a good, fun movie. And you know what? If you're going to be like that, we don't need you. If you're going to, every time there's a female lead, if you're going to downplay it and hate on it, you're sexist, then we don't need you. If you have a valid criticism of the movie, I will listen to it. I had valid criticisms of Ghostbusters. I know people that have had valid criticisms of Wonder Woman. It's okay to have those. But if you are going out and review bombing and hating on it pre-release, you haven't even seen a movie yet, and you're shitting on it because of Brie Larson and, this thing and that, then you need to, have some pause. Because I agree. I was wrapped up into that with Ghostbusters, so I had some pause about that movie. I saw what I needed to see. I saw probably about 20 minutes of the movie, and I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me. But I chilled out on it because, you know what? People liked that movie. People enjoyed it. That's fine. It's okay to not like the movie or like the movie, but you have to draw a line somewhere. And you have to say, is this the right thing to do? Because after all the Ghostbusters stuff, I was like, that's not how I want to be perceived, and that's not how I want to do things. If I don't think that I'm going to like the movie, that's fine. I'm not going to talk about it anymore like that because it's wrong. It's gross. And then anything post-release, if you don't like the movie, you don't like the movie. But if you're going to other websites and intentionally trying to hurt the movie and attack the movie, then I'm going to say you're probably more sexist than anything, and you're probably an incel, and you need to stop. Stop living your life that way. You're going to miss great movies. You're going to miss being a part of great fandoms. It's true. Real quick, before I end the show, I do want to let people know in Nebraska. I'm from Nebraska. I want people to know there's been some heavy flooding in Nebraska due to all the big amounts of snow that they had. It is melting now, and it's causing flooding. So it is feeling like the apocalypse or something biblical is happening in Nebraska. And I want them to know that, I know this doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but my thoughts are with you. I hope that you can get the help you need, because there's some towns underwater. It's a very serious situation. If our president wasn't so focused on the border wall and national emergencies, I think maybe it's time to declare a national emergency in Nebraska and get some help. And other places affected by the bomb cyclone, my prayers are with you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Jake Williams Show. What did you think of Captain Marvel? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or an incel that was talking shit on the movie for no reason? Let me know. Comment below. Let me know. Wherever you listen to this. Yes, you can listen on loudopinionated.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at loudopinionated. You can like us on Facebook, Loud and Opinionated. And Instagram, Loud and Opinionated brand. Follow the other shows. I managed to make it a whole episode before I mentioned the other shows, but other Loud and Opinionated podcasts, Loud Sports, The Underachievers, check them out. You're already here, right? You're already listening to me. Why not check the other two out? Wherever you get your podcast services, those are available. You can follow Loud Sports at Loud Sports Pod on Twitter, and you can follow Underachievers at Under A Games on Twitter. You can also like the Facebook page Underachievers Games. I will see you next week, and if I can do it correctly, next week will be an interesting show. I might record it after this one. Next week, my buddy Andrew Gomez will be on the show, and we will be talking all about why you shouldn't be an anti-vaxxer and why vaccinations are important. Because, like I've said before, it's the easiest medical procedure you can do. So until then, be loud and be proud.